be back with you this morning. Jack and I got gone for a couple of days, which we was here last Sunday morning. We got gone for a couple of days. I think that's as nice a days as we've had in a row all summer. I didn't keep count. It must have been at least half a dozen, so that's probably a pretty good number for us here anyway. Other places I know have had some decent weather. Let me get flipped open here. I should have had this already open. Okay. Bible come apart here, so anyway, we'll get her started here. All righty. If y'all are using the literature we have for our class, the title of our lesson is Honor All Relationships. Something feels like it's hitting me right in the chest. But our scripture this morning comes from Exodus, beginning in chapter 20, be verses 15 through 17, and then it'll skip over to Psalms chapter 37, verses 1 through 6. And the writer here gives the main point of today's lesson as integrity and contentment in Christ form the foundation for good relationships. And again, just for sake of time, I'll let y'all look over the verses there, and we'll just jump right on into it. Excuse me. And it begins here, and if you're using this literature, we've been going through the Ten Commandments over the last few weeks, and we get to this morning then to the commandments, thou shalt not steal, or bear false witness, and then we'll get on into the rest of them here in just a minute. But as we look at just that one point, and we're talking about integrity, honoring in our relationships, even in business dealings. A lot of times we, as people, as friends, as we interact with one another, we pretty much have to be able to depend on one another in order to make any kind of business dealings or transactions or anything. We have to trust in the other person. They have to trust in us. Even if you go to, say, buy a car, buy a house, or anything like that before you borrow money, if you go to the bank or wherever you get your money from, normally you have to sign and say, yeah, you're going to pay it back, and usually there's some interest and so forth, and you agree to do that. And the person then on the other end, they're thinking that you're going to honor what you're saying and what you're putting your autograph to. And if we look here in the Hebrew word, this writer says that just two words are used here and can be translated never steal or no stealing here in verse 15, as it says thou shalt not steal. And he goes on to say that certainly theft involves the taking of possessions, but it can also refer to stealing persons or damaging someone's property as well as defrauding someone. And if we look at it like that, that helps us to really keep our mind and our integrity focused, that we don't want to degrade anybody or take away from, to distract from what they're doing, trying to accomplish, and not just necessarily going and taking something that they have. And as we think about this and the integrity as a Christian, we look at that and say, well, and we get on into the false witness, telling lies, basically, say, I'm only hurting myself. And I guess I came upon this several years ago. I guess it's something that we should know as believers. But just because, I associate myself with Pleasant Grove Baptist Church, and maybe the people I work with or the people that I talk to, and they know where I go to church because I've told them and so forth. Well, then, say I go out here and I steal something and I get caught. And then that person says, well, he goes to Pleasant Grove Baptist Church. They must all be like that. So not only am I affecting me, I'm affecting you. And in doing that, we bring shame not only to ourselves, but on to others. And if we look at that, in that broader spectrum as believers, in a world that's lost, and they say, well, is everybody like that? Is all believers like that? I don't want anything to do with it. And, so there again, we in that respect and in that thinking, we're driving people away from Christ. Our goal as believers is to bring people to Christ, to a saving knowledge of Jesus Christ. And when we do things like that, that causes people that are unbelievers, they don't necessarily have say a good or bad opinion otherwise until they see, somebody that is a believer do something wrong, and then they do form an opinion and say, well, gosh, I don't go to church, and I don't claim to do all this and that, but at least I don't steal, so I'm not going to go to church. I'm not going to become a believer. So as we look at it like that, we may think we're only hurting ourselves, but many times we may be hurting others. And as we look at things like that, it's good to keep in mind, because I would hate to do something that would hurt you. Yeah, and I guess I think about it and say, well, if it's just me, I can deal with it, whatever. But then when it comes to others, or maybe it's their families, and we say, well, when that happens to them, but it's my fault. And in the Bible, yeah, we are responsible for our actions, but we see through the Bible so many times that things happen later. Maybe in a particular person's life they did something wrong, but then there was things that happened later on throughout the Bible that was a result of that didn't necessarily happen to them, but it happened to the generations afterward. And so we don't want that to happen. So we need to be mindful of our actions and the possible reactions from that. Okay, going on here, I know that's a lot said there, but it says that God is the ultimate owner of all things. And I think we would all agree with that. We have stuff. If you go back and you look in the Bible, and some of our lesson comes from Psalms, look at David. He had a lot of stuff. King Solomon, he had lots of stuff. Possession-wise, monies, just, animals, all kinds of things. Excuse me again. But, as we look around us, we say, well, this person's got this much, and I've only got this. And this writer here, he talks about contentment. And, are we content with what we have? We see others around us, and, it seems like they have so much maybe more than we do, or maybe they've got more than this person over here. Yeah, I'm kind of in the middle. I'm okay, but well, what about this person? They don't have anything. You see people starving, people that don't have food, they don't have clean water, they don't have homes. And we say, well, what about them? And says, is God not looking out for them? Well, yes, and that brings up lots of other questions. But if we're looking at ourselves and we say, okay, this person over here, they've got 5 houses and 10 cars and boats and motorcycles and all this stuff. I believe I'll just go get one of theirs because I don't have that many, and I'll go get one of theirs. Well, that's stealing. That's wrong. And the Bible tells us that. And as we look at being content with what we have, now the Bible definitely tells us that we need to be responsible. That we need to work and do things as we're able. Some people just aren't able for one reason or another. But as we look at that, and then being content with what the Lord blesses us with. And some people, yes, it appears to us many times that He blesses others better than some of the others, the ones say that are homeless or that are hungry. And we say, well, what can we do about that? Well, there's different things that we can do as individuals, as churches, and we do some of that. We've got a box here in the back for food and different things. We do the backpack ministry, we do shoe boxes, shoe boxes is kind of a little bit different, but it does help those in needy areas. So there's lots of different ministries that we can support through to help those people, and definitely pray for them. That's something that don't cost you anything but time. And as we look at that, and again, I was thinking as I was studying for this and all, talking about not stealing and giving to God what's His. And if we look at time, we think of say a tithe as being 10%. So if you gave 10% of your time to the Lord, we say, okay, a 24-hour day, that's 2 hours and 40 minutes. As we look at that, we think, man, that's a long time. Okay, we'll just take waking hours. How long are you awake? What is it, 16, 18, 20 hours, depending on who you are. And if we just take 10% of that time, do we do that? Do we take that time to give to the Lord? And you don't have to raise your hands or anything here. I'm not doing that. But as we look at that, we think of things and how that we as believers can walk the walk. Yeah, we may talk the talk, but are we walking the walk? And, and there again, we may be, and we've used this saying so many times, we may be the only Bible someone else ever reads. And as we look at that, say, am I giving up my time? Yeah, maybe I'm giving my time. Maybe I'm giving more than my time. And that's all well and good. Different people are able to do more. But it goes back to a joke. I'll give you this little funny illustration here. There was these three people, and they were trying to decide, well, how do you know how much to give? And the one person says, I go outside, and he said, I got my money in my hand. He said, I draw a circle. And he says, when I stand inside the circle and throw the money up in the air, and he said, all the money that lands outside the circle is God's, and everything that lands inside the circle is mine. And the second fellow, he says, I do the same thing. He said, except all that lands inside the circle is God's, and what lands outside is mine. And the third fellow says, I kind of do it the same way, but mine's a little different. He said, I throw my money up in the air and said, God can just keep what he wants, and said anything that falls back to the ground is mine. So it's sometimes it depends on how we look at things, is how we decide what's the right way or what's supposed to be, I guess you'd say. But as we look at that, talking about stealing, then going on to false witness or lying, essentially is what it's talking about here. And let's see something here. Well, I was going to read. Okay, here it is. This writer says that the ninth commandment uses words that are more at home in a legal setting, such as a courtroom. And it says it relates specifically to perjury. It says where a witness lies about a person or event, especially in a legal setting, often after swearing an oath to tell the truth. And we, again, as believers, people look at us and they anybody that knows anything about Christianity, we, by most people's views, are supposed to be different. The Bible even tells us we're supposed to be different from the world. And in doing that, the world, lies and different things, that just kind of goes along with it. And then, of course, this time of year, now I'm just barely going to touch this, you've got politics, and we have to decide who's telling the truth and who's not and all this. But, and as we look at those things, people look at us as believers and expect us to be honest. They expect us to do what we say and go from there. Now, I'll give you a confession here. Now, I may tell you I'm going to meet you at 10 o'clock. And anybody that knows me knows that I intend to be there at 10 o'clock, but it's probably going to be a little after that. It's not because I don't care. It's not because of all the different kinds of other reasons. I just can't tell you what the reason is. I'm just slack, I guess. I'll be there. As long as I remember, I'll be there, but I might be running just a little behind. So most people realizes that, and if I say 10 o'clock, they're not in too big a hurry. So they go from there. But the writer here says that the Lord is the God of truth. It's found in Isaiah 65 and 16. It says, and he cannot lie. And that's one thing, aren't you glad that God doesn't lie? If he did the Bible, we just as well read a comic book. Because we wouldn't know what to believe and what not to. But God doesn't lie. He's not going to lie. And he expects us, as believers, as his children, to do the same thing. Right? After all, we're supposed to represent Christ. And Christ is being our example. We should follow it as close as we can. And let's see here. Going on, it gives says a broader application can be made that prohibits lying in any context. And sometimes we'll tell little white lies, I guess we call them, and different things. And now maybe in fun or joke or something like that, because people know, what we're doing. Just like I was telling you about the drawing the circles and the money and things. As we look at that, but in our dealings with individuals, with companies, with each other, we should be honest. We should be upright. And tell the truth and follow it as close as we can. Yeah, sometimes there are things that come up. Just like say if you was buying a car or house or some big purchase where you had to borrow money, you may get in an accident. and you may not be able to work, you may not be able to make the money to pay back that loan, and you can't, and so something else has to be worked out. It wasn't any forethought and planning to do wrong, it's just something happened. And as we again, as we look around us, so many times we see things when people are depending on our integrity, and we're depending on them. And as we look at that as believers, we need to try to live up to that. Just like I say, something that I do may have a negative effect on someone else, because that person that I'm dealing with, they may group believers as a whole. Say, well, that person, if he can't do what he told me, then none of them can. I'm not going to deal with any of them. And so that makes it look bad on all of us. Okay, going on here in verse 17, it says, "Thou shalt not covet thy neighbor's house." And it goes on to list several more things. And basically that's saying that we need to be content with what we have. And just like I said a minute ago, yeah, there are other people that have more than we do, but then there's definitely people that have less than we do. And I heard a sermon on 106.9 here a while back, and I told Ronnie or somebody here, I actually remember what he talked about, or at least some of it, and it was sort of along this same line, and I think it was more of something about jobs and different things. But anyway, a lot of times as we look at being coveting or desiring or wanting what someone else has, we're not saying that we're going to take it necessarily, not in our mind at that time, but if we allow it to continue, that may come across our mind. And if we're not content with what we have, and anyway, this the particular message, he talked about having an opportunity, a desire, and a need. As we look at things, if we say if it's a job change or purchasing a large something or something like that, and again, I'll tell you this little story. It's kind of funny, and some of you guys, you can probably relate with me. And at least with me, a lot of times, through the years, I'll see something I want, and I ain't gonna get it, I ain't gonna spend the money, and then I keep thinking about, well, it'd be all right to have. So I have a desire, and then, okay, guys, say if it's a gun, a rifle, I say, man, I'd really like to have that, but I'm not gonna spend the money, and I'm not gonna go to wherever. I'm not going to go to Virginia to get it. But then all of a sudden an opportunity comes up closer by. I said, well, I like it, and here's opportunity. And then the next thing you know, well, I need that. So we go from having a desire for it, and then we got an opportunity to get it, and then all of a sudden we think we need it. That is, in our mind we say, well, I need to get it before the opportunity to get it is gone, and therefore I no longer am able to feel my desire. But as we look at that in a spiritual sense, we as before we came to know Christ, we needed Christ, definitely. Mm-hmm. And then there was an opportunity. So if we came to church, or maybe we just heard a message, or maybe it's even songs or a message on the radio, or maybe it's just a friend talking to us. So then we had the opportunity. And then we have the desire. We realize, hey, that is what I need in my life. So we can take those things that's material, and if you turn it around and look at it in the spiritual sense, yes, that can be a good thing. That we are able, that we have that opportunity, and we realize we have the need, and then we desire. And God is definitely there for us. He hasn't run out of grace. He hasn't run out of mercy. He's there for us. He's just waiting for us to come to Him. And he'll meet us right there, whether it be at the altar or whether it be sitting in your car, leaned up against a tree, wherever we're at. We don't have to be in a specific spot for God to hear us. And aren't you glad of that? Okay, going on here, it says a couple things. Let me read real quick. All right, just as coveting is a starting point. If we look at someone else's stuff. And we say, well, I'd like to have that. Well, the coveting, the desire for it is a starting point. But then when we take it further and we go out there and say, okay, I'm just going to take this. They want me, so they got plenty. I'm just going to take this. That's where we begin to get in trouble. is if we let that desire, that want, take us to the point that we're able to go to another step and actually take it from the person. But here this writer tells us in the commandment that you shouldn't covet. You shouldn't have that stronger desire. You should be content in what God has blessed you with. Now, if you take that person that's over here, say in a foreign country, and they're sleeping on the ground, they're not sure where their food's going to come from the next day. Yeah, that's a little easier to see. They want something. They want a physical need that's going to satisfy their hunger. Have somewhere to sleep and to stay warm, or maybe to stay cool for that matter. That's a little easier to see, but still yet, God is taking care of those people, providing for them. And it may be through ministries and different things. I can't give you all the in and outs on that. I'm not even going to attempt to. But does God not care for those people? No, God still cares for those people just as much as He cares for us. And if we look at it again, that gives us that do have more, the opportunity to bless others through our gifts, our giving. Maybe it's our time, maybe it's our efforts, and different things like that. Okay, going on here, it says Jesus also taught that sinful actions originate in the heart. Sometimes it's not necessarily the act, it's the thought that really catches us, just like the covetousness. It leads to more. And we go from there. All right, I'm trying to get through as much of this as I can here. Going on over now to Psalms chapter 37, and beginning in verse 1. And it says, "Fret not thyself because of evildoers, neither be thou envious about the workers of iniquity." And it says, this writer here says that King David encouraged the people of Israel and us to remain committed to God because He provides for our needs and fulfills all our godly desires. Now that doesn't say He fills every desire. The ones that are godly, the ones that are upright, the ones that are just, I guess is one way to put it. And that desire for something else, stuff-wise, we may not necessarily get that. And I've used this illustration several times in a Sunday school class. When I was growing up, I wanted a go-kart. Now, I prayed for a go-kart. Now, there's nothing wrong with praying for things you want, but I prayed for a go-kart. Well, I never did get it. I still don't have one. And people said, well, God didn't answer your prayer. Yes, He did. His answer was no. And like I told people, if I'd had that go-kart when I was a kid, I might not be standing here today because I might have got killed. And so God knows what He's doing. We may not think He does sometimes, or we may not think He hears us, but God knows, and He definitely hears us. But in the Israelites, as we look back through the Bible, we see where the Israelites, they were like on a roller coaster, up and down, in different times. Sometimes they were real close to God, and sometimes they were completely away from God. One of the things that comes to my mind pretty quick is like when Moses went up on the mountain, and the Israelites were there with Aaron and the golden calf. And so when Moses comes back, he talks about how come they made the calf, and Aaron basically said, well, we just threw the gold in there, and out come this calf. We don't know what happened. Well, I don't think it kind of happened exactly like that. But anyway, there was somebody fashioned it there. But as we look at that, we can point our fingers at the Israelites, but are we any different? We have our ups and downs. Yeah, sometimes there's things that really bother us and get to us, and maybe we get down in the dumps or whatever, but we have and serve a loving, merciful, forgiving God. And we know that. And it's our job, our responsibility to tell the world. That's right. That's what we as believers do. Yeah, we've got our ticket. We're in heaven as a believer. But what about everybody else? And that's part of what we're here for. As we come to church and we fellowship together, we learn from God's Word, and hopefully we should get motivated and get the joy within us that we want to share with others. And as we look in these verses here, and it says, well, that's this. You got to do this. You got to do this. You got to do this. Well, we shouldn't want to do this. You shouldn't say, well, I have to do this. You should be saying, I have the ability to do this, or I have a chance, or I can. So it's not again, people that don't know Christ, that aren't familiar with the Bible, they may look at it as a book of rules, but we should also, yes, it's rules for sure, at least to some degree, but it's also shows us opportunities. And it talks about here basically being envious in verse 1, about being envious of others and, wanting what they've got or wanting their stuff or wanting their life, if you will. And we think it's so much better. But sometimes people put on a good front. The life they appear to have really isn't as good as what they make it look like. But for believers, and I think I've heard this here in a sermon here not so long ago, that the best is yet to come.
Yes.
That we as believers, we're in this world and we've got to make the best of it as we have it. But this isn't the end. This isn't it. As we're getting ready to go, but the best is yet to come.
Yes.
And if you like me and you look at stuff physically or whatever, usually we have dessert at the end of the meal. Now, I'll be honest with you, once in a while, if it's sitting there, I'm going to go ahead and get us by the dessert first. And as believers, I guess we get to see that, we get to sample that dessert as we see others come to know Christ and others that are believers in some of the things maybe that they do in their lives. So that's kind of our reward, I guess you would say. But our real reward is when we get to heaven. And going on through here right quickly, it talks about for they shall be cut down like the grass and wither. It's talking about these people that we see that seem to have so much. And of course here, fall of the year, leaves are beginning to fall and they're changing colors and stuff. It's not the end of their life, but it's a season in their life. But here in this writer, as he's talking about, these people that have all these things, they're going to pass away. The stuff, just like this podium, it's wood. So, boy, I'd like to have one of them in my house. Well, you can, and then tomorrow you might cut it up for firewood, and it'll pass away. It'll be gone. But the treasures we lay up in heaven, they're going to be there from now on. They're not going to pass away. Mm-hmm. It talks about trusting in the Lord, and as we do that, as we're content, as we trust in God, we allow Him to provide. Now, that doesn't mean that we go kick back in the rocking chair and sit there and just wait for everything to come in. No, the Bible tells us, we've got to be diligent. And, we got to help to provide for ourselves, and as we are blessed, that we're help others. And he tells us that several times through Scripture. But he also goes on here in verse 4: "Delight thyself also in the Lord, and He shall give thee the desires of thine heart." Now there again, that doesn't mean every little thing we want. Ladies, that don't mean you get a pair of shoes just because you want them. And guys, we don't get a extra tool or a rifle or whatever it is you might desire. But he provides for us. And verse 5 talks about, "Commit thy way unto the Lord, trust in Him, and He shall bring it to pass." And in that verse there, we look at that and we depend on God to bring what He wants us to have. Sometimes we want to jump ahead. We want to do things out of our own power and our own what we think are abilities. But God is ultimately in control. And aren't you glad He is? That's like I was telling them downstairs this morning. The sun was shining at my house, and I get over here and it's mist and rain. I mean, we're no farther away than that. If we was in charge of the weather, don't you know how bad we'd have it messed up? And so aren't we glad that God is in control? And then verse 6 here: "And He shall bring forth thy righteousness as the light, and thy judgment as the noonday." And this statement here it's not mine. I actually got it out of the Students' Quarterly here, and it goes back as the person that wrote it, his friend, something or another. But anyway, it says, "God is our source, and everything else is a resource." And when we look at that, that's so true. God has given us different things to use and to be able to have, and different things like that we can use, but ultimately it came from Him. Just like as we come to church, just like we're here today as we'll study God's Word. Well, years and years ago, they didn't even have very many Bibles to pass around. I dare say everybody in here has got, if you don't have a Bible with you, you've got one at home, and probably got several at home that you could use if you needed to and wanted to. But definitely there are places in the world that don't have that. But there again, resource or printed material, resources, different things online, all different kinds of programs and different things that we can use and that have the ability to use to accomplish what we said our goal was, and that's to reach other people for Christ. Then just a couple things here, and I'm gonna finish up. Let's see, He will take care of us and will handle the things that concern us, especially those things we cannot control. And that's like was talking about people that say halfway around the world. Well, we'll probably never meet those people. We'll never talk to them. But yet, as we pray for them, as we do different things to minister to them, whether it's through giving or whatever, God will take that, He'll multiply it, and He'll use it as He sees fit. Will it conquer or will it eliminate hunger or need? Well, no, maybe not. But yet, God's still in control. And then what else have I wrote here? It says, trust Him to take care of you. And so many times, I guess, as we look at it, we want something, we desire something, just like we want patience. So many of you may be impatient. We say, boy, I wish I could be more patient now. And we want it answered right now. But sometimes God doesn't work that way. God's been around for a little while longer than we have. So it's a minute to Him may not be necessarily what we consider a minute or an hour or even a day. But if nothing else this morning, as you look back over this lesson and stuff, just remember to be content, to be honorable in your dealings, in your relationships, if I could talk, with others, and to remember that God is our source. He's our source. Everything else is a resource. All right. Anybody have any questions? I don't know that I can answer, but we'll try. All right. Well, thank you very much.
Okay.